Welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast with the goal to educate, inform, and save their listeners time as they navigate the market and properties in their neighborhoods. Get ready to join real-life siblings and professional real estate advisors, Donna Reed and Eric Seemann, as they discuss how it may be simple, but it ain't always easy.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Donna Reed and I'm with Keller Williams Southern Arizona, and I'm here with my real sibling,
Eric Seemann, and I'm with Keller Williams Heritage here in San Antonio, Texas.
I promise that one of these days we're going to get it together with that whole intro and the recording and so many technology devices and things that I'm just not, it's not my best thing. Whoa. Anyway, we're here as real siblings, and we're here to talk a little bit about life in the small town in Ohio where we grew up and how it has impacted our careers in real estate for me in Tucson and for Eric in San Antonio. So this week, we're going to talk about brick. We're going to talk about facades. We're going to talk about masonry, adobe, burnt adobe, slump block, limestone, concrete block, all the rocks. But first, Eric's going to talk to you a little bit about some learning that we heard after our last episode.
Yeah, so when we're going through this, honestly, this is a learn as we go. We are trying to get better as we go through this. And last episode, we planned on talking about foundations, and specifically or intently about a pier and beam foundation of our 1868 home. And as soon as we started the discussion, we followed a rabbit. We started talking basements. We started talking floods. We were not focused on foundations. So based on what we heard and the feedback we got, thank you very much for those of you who are listening and giving us that feedback. I just want to try to explain a little bit better about what I refer to as a pier and beam, also maybe referred to as a post and frame foundation. So the easiest way to do this is to go back to the pioneers, the original colonists, colonials who came over here from Europe. Think settlements like Jamestown and Plymouth. And their first priority was protecting themselves from the elements. So they built simple shelters on the ground. Walls, roof, protect from the rain, protect from the wind, protect from winter storms, things along those lines. But it was a dirt floor. And obviously that having protection around you was good, but you were still on a dirt floor and subject to whatever massive rains you may have, erosion, flooding, bugs, all of those kind of things. So they started to install floors, but then they found that putting wood directly on the ground just trapped pests, gave insects a way in, and really was not an overall solution. So what do? You raise the floors. And this was done with the implementation of a pier and beam or a post and frame construction. So they would use wood, they'd use brick, they may use stone, but they put posts on the ground or sank them into the ground to create a space above the ground. And then on top of that is where they built the frame or installed the beams that actually became the floor of the house. And in doing this, it accomplished several things. It reduced and eliminated moisture into the house. It created a natural air insulation barrier, which we're actually going to talk a little bit about with our brick walls, which helped in climate changes. It reduced insects, rodents, pest infestation. You can imagine keeping baskets of grain and stuff on the floor, in a dirt floor, what that might do. And then it provided a level surface for the exterior and interior walls to be constructed. So, and then finally, I'll say last is it eliminated the need. If you were putting in a fruit cellar, you had to do less excavation because you've raised the floor, which is ultimately the ceiling in that basement or fruit cellar, so you didn't have to dig as deep.
You know, I think about the basements that we walked around in, and I saw all of that. I just never knew what it was called. When you're, 10 years old or 15 years old or whatever, you don't ask, what's the name of that structure?
Yeah. You just knew that you walked up a couple of steps to go into a house. You didn't think about it. I mean, when we were in the basement, we didn't think about what was holding the house up. You just didn't.
Exactly.
So hopefully that clears that up a little bit. And I'll just say that 1868, we talked about the house didn't have plumbing. Once we started with installation of rural electric, and with plumbing, that space that was created allowed all of that to go in a whole lot easier, and actually provided, think septic and sewer, a gravity feed system for getting wastewater out of and away from the house.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the exterior of the home. And so the home that we've spoken the most about in Lindsey that we lived in was 3 layers of brick. And it was self-insulated by having that, because not only were the bricks a certain way, but the air in between. So I have just learned that air is a better insulator than the block itself, which, as a non-science person, I would never have known that. And then Eric and I talked the other day about why red, and the fact that at the very first episode, we talked about the fact that I lived in 4 homes in Lindsey. So my 4th home was yellow brick. And so red and yellow were the most common colors. It was built in 1957. And frankly, I never cut into the wall. So do I know if it was a facade or solid brick? I don't. I could probably go back and find out.
I'm pretty confident that was a facade. That was not a solid wall. Yeah, it had wood timber on the inside and interior framing. It was a facade, and it was 4-side brick. Yeah. But, the yellow color they could do at that point, they were either adding more cement, because that brick age was the longer brick that we talked about. It was like a 12-inch brick. Had the texture in the rib down the front side. And they did that by changing the amount of cement and slate into the brick. Is how they changed color. And originally red brick was because of the clay. Yeah, exactly.
Which we'll talk about a little bit about adobe. But as we think about where we live now, and we're talking rocks as compared to wood frames. So Eric, in San Antonio, I love what I see there. I don't know if the houses are solid or just decorative.
There are some. So one of the earliest historic districts in town is the King William district. And that was German settlers, and they are solid limestone walls. I actually had a chance to tour one this spring that's on the market. Actually, the San Antonio Preservation Society is currently housed in it. The entire grounds are listed for $4 million.
Is that down by the Alamo? Is that
it's down around the corner from the Alamo and La Villita, and it's Southtown is what they would refer to it now, but the King William district specifically. And it's one of those ones where it was limestone rock, and they were probably 12 to 14 inches thick.
Wow.
And stacked. So each rock weighed a ton that had to be lifted and hoisted and put into place.
And don't you also, and here we go, the rabbit hole thing, but I'm thinking limestone. So aren't some of the fences out there that I see out in rural San Antonio also limestone? Like they use
there are. I mean, you get out into the hills, and I live in Bandera County, the hill country. And I remember when we moved in here, the one time Dad had a chance to visit before he had passed away, he's like, "Why did you buy 6 acres of rock?"
Right.
And I have built retaining walls. It's what holds my driveway in place. It's dry stacked, and people turn it into fences, similar to what they did, I guess, think Ireland and Scotland,
right,
where you see all of those fences, and that's all just rock they removed from the fields, trying to get the fields ready to go, and stacked up and made really, really nice fences in between. So there's some of that going on too.
So from a limestone perspective, because I've never lived in a limestone house, and we have stayed, I think, in some Airbnbs like that, at least are partially that, and they're just like concreted and whatever put together. They don't cut the rock, right? The rock is.
No, it depends. They can do rough and they can do cut stone. I mean, there's lots of options. I mean, similar to a neighborhood that's got a lot of stucco.
Yeah.
Where you've got certain shades or colors that you can paint the stucco based on the restrictions in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
There's limestone, and they picked like 6 different sets of colors. Some of it has a little more gray, some of it's more white, some of it may have a little bit more iron in it, so it's going to have a little red to it. There's even some that picks up a little copper, so it turns green. Yeah. And they do combinations of the stone that way to create the look. There's one that everybody just kind of refers to generically as the giraffe pattern, because you take a look at it and it's got these dark brown ones in amongst some of the lighter limestone, and it just looks like spots on a giraffe.
Fun. So now in Tucson, and I was thinking about this when you just mentioned Ireland and Scotland, which, by the way, maybe when I'm in Scotland, I'll get some pictures of some of those. But
and post on our website
that we're working on. Yeah. So the here it was adobe, right? So people use what they had. And so here in Arizona, adobe was, a mishmash of the dirt, the sand, straw, whatever there could be, and then just dried in the sun. So that was some of the original, structures here. And over time, one of my favorites is in a parking lot kind of near where I live. It's a cigar shop now, but you can see the roof has bowed over time, but they've kept the traditional adobe. Now, part of the reason people don't do that anymore and they started baking them is because, like you were saying, it lent itself to bugs and things. So, you got
because the adobe was made with straw, right? That's one of the things that they mixed in a certain amount of organic material besides the rock.
Exactly. And then they would put it in a wood frame. And then as it got hard, then they would just let it dry in the sun. And that, became what it did. And then eventually they started baking. They would do the same thing. They'd have the frame and then they would bake it. And then, I think I said to you earlier that then we have slump block. And I'm like, okay, I know that slump block. I know it's different than adobe. They look the same. They're bigger than traditional bricks, but didn't really know the difference. So I'm learning that it's more concrete. And what I found was, as I was researching the difference between like the insulation factors. So one of, the adobe is a better insulating product, but the slump block is more uniform and keeps things totally dry. So everything has its kind of better or worse durability. And so what are you looking for? And then just before we started recording, I was telling you about talking to this appraiser about the block houses and concrete block. And if they were filled or if they weren't, but it's fascinating to me to learn the differences and why people and builders choose certain things. And also, we as realtors, do we know enough to relay that information when in fact they're just looking to see if the kitchen is modern, right?
Yeah. Thank you, HGTV and DIY.
Exactly.
I don't know who, the show that I consider to really be the precursor there was Trading Spaces, and there was one filmed here just down the road from us about the tail end of when Trading Spaces was moving on. Yeah. But yeah, they focus on the interior and not the exterior of the house. It's kind of the secondary. It's like, oh, that's cute. Let's go inside.
Right. And I know that San Antonio, like Tucson, we have these subdivisions. And when people first move here, they're like, everything's tan, yeah, it is. But with brick, and we've talked about facades. So part of what people have done or builders have done is, okay, to have some variety, we're going to make this red brick house, but we're going to use yellow bricks to frame the window. So those are there for decoration, and people can make diamonds and different shapes that are decorative, but aren't really serving a purpose except to be decorative and make your house look different than the others on the block.
Right. And I mean, we refer to that as the elevation of the facade. Right. Like we talked about. I mean, you go into a neighborhood that's building new and it's like, well, this house is available. There's 5 different elevations. Yeah. And it changes the roof line and the pitch and the dormer window and the amount of brick stone, mortar, whatever the front of the house is going to look like, changes that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But hey, before you go on, I want to go back, because what you were saying specifically about the adobe and the slump block applies to our house in Ohio.
Yeah.
1868. So doing some research on this, getting ready. The brick industry in Ohio really didn't take off until starting in the 1870s to 1880s.
Oh, wow.
And kind of grew until the 1920s. So when was our house built?
68.
That's right. So that means the
We were a
brick
trendsetter.
could have been brought in from Pennsylvania.
Oh.
Because the Atlantic coast colonists, the reason there's so much brick is there's natural clay there. They didn't even have to do much processing. They pulled it out, add water, and they ended up with brick. So there was a lot of brick that was being done. But our house, because it was before the industrial age, which again began late 1800s into the early 1900s, could have possibly been handmade kind of bricks.
Wow.
And just to give you an idea, I had to do some math on this, because it's like, okay, what does that actually mean? I don't think I ever, as much as I thought about our house and its uniqueness, I never thought about our house from a construction standpoint.
Right.
So our house had 10-foot ceilings inside and space for the floor. So I figured the walls were roughly 22 feet. And when I say 22 feet, that's from the top of that lower skirting founded that covered the piers and beams and up to where the roof line started. So 22 feet. And picturing our house, the Lynn Street side of it, roughly 30 feet of wall, even with the turns and that as it goes along. And then 30 feet down the Maple Street side facing the church, and then around in the corners. All totaled, when I did all of the math, I came up with about 2,374 square feet of brick that was needed to create the exterior walls. And that's after accounting for 4 doors and windows and those kind of things. So the average brick was 9 inches by 2.5 by 4 inches. So what we see is the front of the brick in a house. If the brick is being used to build a house or a structure, you see the 2.5 by 9 inch side. If you were using that same brick for a paver, you'd see it on a sidewalk or a road on the 4 foot by 9 inch side. Okay. So our house, that airspace is officially called a cavity. All right. By the time you put the interior and exterior, because it takes 6.3 bricks to do 1 square foot, it took 32,541 bricks to build the original core of the house in 1868.
Okay, just so y'all don't know, I would never have done all this research. There's differences between me and my sibling. Which is the reason that we both are here.
So wait. Here's the pieces that just a dry brick that size weighs roughly 4.5 pounds.
Holy cow.
That means the brick weight itself was 146,000 pounds, or 73 tons of brick that were used to make the original core of our house before they even added the kitchen on.
Please tell me there will not be a quiz.
No, there's not going to be a quiz, but the last part that I found is there's an amount of moisture that a dry brick can consider to be absorbed. Right. So the weight of the house would fluctuate
based on the
absorption. During really, really heavy, wet seasons. It can gain up to 20% of its weight. So it goes from being 73 tons up to just under 88 tons of brick. The railroad wasn't in place yet. The whole reason I started checking the railroad is the railroad at that time would have been the Toledo-Sandusky Railroad, which became part of the Lakeshore Southern Michigan Railroad in the 1870s.
Yeah.
So if it was brought in, it had to bring all of that weight from somewhere on the East Coast because it wasn't being manufactured. And if it was manufactured locally, they made 73 tons of brick somewhere in and around Lindsey, maybe even the kiln in our yard. Who knows?
Oh my!
So how's that for some?
Yeah, you told me that you told me you worked on numbers. I was like, I didn't know what kind of numbers you had.
I wanted to blow your mind. Did I blow your mind?
It blows my mind. That's right. That was that emoji you kept sending me. This is what I'm thinking about. The three little pigs, that's why they couldn't blow down the brick house, right? Yeah. There was no way that the wolf was going to be able to blow down.
That's right.
And before we wrap this up, because I know we got to be getting close, there are some real estate investors that only will buy brick, adobe, rock homes because less maintenance, definitely sturdy. Now, building on pads out here, which is another thing, right? You don't have that big foundation underneath, but people know that the wear and tear and the maintenance is less. And I have a friend that owns like 12 houses. They're all brick. They won't only look at the...
I said a hand-thrown brick that wasn't sent through the kiln was considered a soft brick and expected to only survive about 30 years. The house was built in 1868, and here we are in 2022. So has the brick done a little bit better than its 30-year life?
It's done. Yeah, that's the hindsight. See, yeah, that's somebody out there going, told ya.
Done pretty darn well. The wood siding that had termites and everything else.
Yeah.
And brick and limestone down here, common in the new builds.
Yeah.
Up until the 1940s, we were still a lot of wood.
Yeah.
Had transitioned from the hard quarries to the limestone quarries to the wood because it was more easily attainable, shippable, buildable, stackable, everything. I mean, you can imagine the limestone.
To the end where we're not over abusing our time for people.
Yeah, we're close. We started we're at 21 minutes. So
we
need to wrap things up.
We need to wrap it up, and we hope that you have learned a little bit. I know I've learned a little bit. Just doing this for me is a learning experience, and that if you have questions, truly, if you want to know more about adobe because you've never been to the desert, or if you've never seen a limestone house, as we move forward, our website, realsiblings.com.
Woohoo!
Coming in the future. We're going to hopefully transcribe these and also be able to then post some pictures and show some things about what we're doing. So excited about that. And next time, Eric, are we talking about interior walls?
Well, we were going to go to interior walls, but we may have some more exterior wall stuff we need to talk about because we really didn't talk about the construction.
Chicken wire and styrofoam.
Yeah, chicken wire and styrofoam, because that just instills confidence, right?
Yeah. Alrighty, so Eric, you want to wrap it up for us?
Yeah. So again, we want to thank everybody for listening, joining us. As I'll say, this stroll down memory lane, we reminisce and reflect about life in our small village impacted our lives and careers in real estate. As we wrap up, please keep in mind our goal is to communicate, educate, and connect with you, our listeners. If you're in Tucson or San Antonio, we are here to help you find the perfect property for your family to call home and create lasting memories in. If you happen to be listening across the United States or even around the globe, understand that we are both part of extensive networks of professional real estate advisors, and we would be happy to connect you with a great agent. Remember, it may be simple, but it ain't always easy. And until next time, I'm Eric.
I'm Donna.
And we are
Real
Siblings. All right. Thanks for joining us.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home.